And welcome back to Janky AF and Year of the Aerostar, episode number 98. We are so close to 100 episodes. I hope you all enjoyed that little introduction to my new series I'm doing. If you happen to watch that, Janky do Thanky. And that did feature some sweet Aerostar content. But today we have another Year of the Aerostar fully dedicated to the celebration of the Ford Aerostar. Very fun one today, and we're still in Canada. We're still in on our little mini Canadian residency, which hopefully will take us just about to 100 episodes. So without further ado, here we have a 1994 Ford Aerostar Cargo, listed in Colwood, British Columbia for $1,500. That's right, we are on the west coast of Canada now, and as I'm looking at this $1,500 price, I'm realizing that I have once again not come prepared to reveal what that translates to. We might as well do the mileage as well. So what that means for you is you get to watch some, we'll take a quick commercial break, and you get to see an old vintage Aerostar commercial to beat you over the head with it. So here you go.
Most of us here in the Northwest like wide open spaces. Well, here's a way you can get space inside as well as outside. The Ford Aerostar. It doesn't take much to get into.
Okay, now, so I have seen some listings that say CA or CD, like Canadian dollars. So I'm not sure if this is actually American dollars or Canadian dollars, but let's just assume for the sake of, potentially it being a little bit cheaper in the imaginary scenario that we're going to travel 3,000 miles across the country to buy a $1,500 Aerostar. For my own sake, I'll feel better. So let's pretend, and it very well may be Canadian dollars, but I just don't know, because now that I've seen it with the Canadian, now I'm wondering if it doesn't say it, if it means it's in American dollars. Anywho, 1,500 Canadian dollars translates to just 1,132 US dollars and 12 cents. So a steal of a deal. This is getting sub $1,000 or close to $1,000 for a running Aerostar is very hard. Any car for that matter, very difficult. A whopping 293,000 kilometers on this vehicle, which, usually when you look at the kilometers, it's like, oh, don't be scared, it's going to be a lot lower in miles, but that still equals 182,061 miles. So this van has put in a lot of work in its day. It's kind of cool with kilometers because you just get to have more of them. It's easier to like, oh, I got a 400,000 kilometer vehicle. It's like, what, 230,000 miles. Not as impressive. I mean, 230,000, don't get me wrong, still very impressive. But I digress. I like kilometers and miles. It's all the same, even though they are different. All right. Exterior color red, interior color blank. And a very short and sweet seller's description where they seem to be particularly interested in one sort of part of the vehicle, and we'll address that now. So seller's description: good runner, work van, no muffler on it, and catalytic converter is disconnected. We'll come back to that in a second, but I like that it's, it's funny that they're calling it a good runner, because this sentence is a good runner of a run-on sentence. Good runner, work van, no muffler on it, and catalytic converter is disconnected. That's like sort of, a short poem. I don't know what the rules of a, certain styles of poems are, but certainly, you could probably punch this out at like the Beat Poetry Night and maybe people would be impressed. Good runner, work van. Good runner, work van, no muffler on it, and catalytic converter is disconnected. So that's kind of funny that it has a catalytic converter, and unfortunately they don't say Cadillac converter, which would have been more funny, but they've written it seems like they understand what a Cadillac converter is, or a catalytic converter. If you don't understand that, a lot of people on Marketplace will say a Cadillac converter, which is very funny. Incidentally, what would be very funny is to take, like a lot of times you see people take like a Lincoln Town Car and like gussy it up as if it's like a Rolls Royce or something like that. If you took like a Buick and rebadged it with all Cadillac decals, then that would be a Cadillac converter. And hopefully it would have a Cadillac converter on it so it could pass inspection. Okay, we're burying the lead here. And let's just, before we talk about it, let's just scroll around, look at some of these images, take in all of what's going on here. Hopefully some of you junior Aerostar sleuths at home are starting to put together some of these pieces based on what you're seeing and the aesthetics of this vehicle. A lot of wonderful jank going on here. I always love like a little slide bolt as a door latch. That makes me very, very happy. That's very janky thanky. I imagine you could lock that, because if you couldn't, then I really don't know what it's doing. Okay, your interior, we have some seats removed here. That's actually very fun. We'll get to that in a second. But, to go around and look at this vehicle, the funny thing is it says it's a cargo, and obviously it's a passenger that has been converted to cargo because it doesn't have the barn doors. You can see the interior has been ripped out here. The seat ripped out, which I actually don't know if I've ever seen the front seat taken out of an Aerostar, which I really, really like. I've ripped out the rear seats in my Prius, so I can sort of identify or relate to that on some level. But the main thing that's giving this away, and we'll get to the secondary thing, is, the grille and headlight bezels. And maybe this is like sweet justice because we finally actually get to see a red Aerostar in this paint, guys. And I'm avoiding saying what I'm about to say, but we did those two back-to-back red Aerostar Sports in Canada. But we didn't have a great picture of the front of the vehicle. We had a picture of one, but the air dam and the bezels, the grille were not painted red. This is not only a passenger van that's been converted to a cargo, but a sport model that's been sort of converted to a work van, which tells you a lot about, the Aerostar. Now, if anyone here, you're maybe car fans, you've watched the series Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. My favorite episode is with Norm Macdonald, and very fitting that we're doing a little Canadian residency here, as Norm was a Canadian. And Jerry Seinfeld drives this like beat up old, I think it's a Porsche 356 or something like that. Don't know a ton about my early Porsches. I apologize if that's wrong. One of these old Porsche little convertibles, and he always connects the car with the guest, if you haven't seen the show. So the car is always emblematic of the guest. And it's maybe it's really one of the best sort of car matches to the guest too. And he even has a line about it where he says, just like this car, it never got treated very well, but it just kept on going. So he has this beat up old jalopy of a Porsche, and I actually like that too because I like that he hasn't restored it, and obviously it shows that Mr. Seinfeld has some sort of appreciation for the janky. So I'll use this opportunity to invite Mr. Seinfeld to do some sort of collaboration where we talk in a car. But it has to be a Ford Aerostar. So your formal invitation has been sent, Jerry, Gerald. I guess your name. I don't know if Jerry is short for Gerald, but anyways, yeah, janky thanky. Okay, so I'm getting very sidetracked in this episode. Anywho, this Aerostars in general are like that. They never got treated very well, but somehow they just kept on going. So the sport model was, obviously largely a cosmetic package, as Wikipedia likes to say, but this episode is very interesting for one reason, which we'll address, which of course is such a hilarious line because it was entirely a cosmetic package. Like, to say something was largely a cosmetic package is like this polite, euphemism where you don't just say what it is. Like, you're somehow apologizing for the fact that Ford made it just painted a bunch of stuff and wrote sport on it and slapped some running boards on and called it the sport model. Like, the difference between largely and totally is small, and yet it's binary. Like, they didn't do anything to make it more, and there was no performance upgrade. So I'm not sure why they always say it was largely a cosmetic. I don't know why I can't get off this. It's the funniest thing in the world to me. It's hilarious that they would give this little hint that, you know, maybe, well, they you know, they did something, you know, the shiny paint on the air dam made it more, you know, aerodynamic. So it wasn't totally cosmetic, you know, some nonsense like that. Anywho, but it was fully on, you know, in the Venn diagram of the Aerostar being sort of like a cargo utilitarian vehicle and being like more of a passenger family-oriented vehicle. The Sport falls all the way on the other end of being like a passenger vehicle. Like, it had these aesthetic things to it. It was never offered in a cargo guise. You couldn't get a Sport with barn doors or anything like that. I don't even know if you could get a Sport with a manual transmission, which is interesting because I've never seen one. I don't think they existed. But if they made a Sport in a manual transmission, then you could argue it wasn't entirely a cosmetic package, because inherently a manual transmission is more sporty. Now, maybe I'll leave a little poll question as to whether I should manual swap my 93 Aerostar Sport. That would be very interesting, wouldn't it? It's already rear-wheel drive. It's all set up for a sports car spec. And obviously Aerostars came with manuals, so you would think it'd be a pretty easy swap to do. Just thinking out loud here. Anywho, so the fact that this has been turned into a cargo van, and, you know, the front seats are ripped out, and the interior has been partially ripped out, shows you that these vans just really were used and abused. They were rode hard and put away wet. And that, to me, is one of the most endearing qualities of the Aerostar, because here you have this incredibly aspirational vehicle like Ford, and I think they really tried to follow through on it. Obviously, it's built to a budget. You know, it's a mass-produced vehicle that doesn't cost, you know, a lot of money compared to other vehicles, especially at the time. It was a budget vehicle while still offering, you know, some elements of luxury and capability and all that. However, you know, it was a mass-produced commodity, and yet all the little things they did to the Aerostar, like the headphones in the rear, the bed, the seats that folded into a bed, which I believe was on Eddie Bauer only editions, the little flop out windows instead of, you know, or the little slide out windows instead of just popping out, and while no windows in a van rolled down at that point, but the slide, you know, was like cheap to make and offered, you know, superior usability than this stupid little toggle latch that would always get stuck and pinch your fingers. So there was a lot of really cool little engineering pieces of kit or little tricks that went into the Aerostar to make it sort of stand out and be like a really cool vehicle. Not to mention the styling. You know, everything about the ethos was like basically shoot for the stars. You know, if the Aerostar could encapsulate like one mood or one sort of energy or ethos, it's like shoot for the stars. You know, like you can do anything in a Ford Aerostar. That's what they were kind of selling, and it just happened to sort of be true. You know, like the Aerostar, they're still out there, still working, still doing stuff. I moved stuff with my Aerostar the other day. I moved a bunch of furniture. I took a whole ton of boxes over from one house to another, and so you know, I really think like the Aerostar's vision was achieved. Now, is it as impressive as the space shuttle, which they marketed it with? Like, well, no, obviously not. But guess what? It cost a lot less than the space shuttle. And, you know, a lot of people don't need to go into outer space. They just need to haul a bunch of crap or a bunch of people. So the fact that it was sort of willing, you know, I'm not trying to, you know, anthropomorphize the Aerostar, but the fact that it was this workhorse and it fulfilled all these capabilities and all these needs for so many people, and yet I think was never appreciated, you know, like, and in particular, even like, you know, the Chrysler minivans have, the first minivan, Lee Iacocca, the K-Car, you know, they have their like little moment in the sun. They like invented the minivan. And then you have your GMC Safari and Chevy Astro. I got flipped that back. Chevy Astro and GMC Safari. And those have a big cult following. They were turned, the Tiger vans turned into campers, and like people love Astros. People I've known for years, and no shade, but people I've known for years, they see me and they say, "Oh, how's your Astro?" Or, "Oh, he has Astro vans." Sometimes they'll even call it an Aerostar. So the Aerostar really lives in the shadow of those two vans. And the funny thing is, it was the number 2 seller. It actually passed the Chevy vans and sat just below the Chrysler vans. But I think, the front wheel drive sort of car focused minivan was just like all some people needed. So here the Aerostar sits like forever just in the shadow of something. But for me, and for probably you if you're watching this insanity, it really stands far and above anything just because of the sort of completeness and continuity of its vision of what it could be and what it was and what it still is today. So a very heartfelt episode today. Let's rewind a little bit. The other thing you'll notice on this vehicle that is a dead giveaway is you can see the stripes here. So we know this was a Sport. Aside from the front grille, we can see the stripes here. It would have had Sport on it. Now, why it was removed from this part and why the Sport is not there, I actually don't know. Maybe it was below this section, and that's why you don't see Sport there anymore. But clearly, the running boards have been ripped off, and this has just been painted. Now, it might have even been painted before the running boards were ripped off, and maybe that's why you see this little section of like unpainted here. Or maybe this metal was put on later as like a little cap if any rust was repaired. And it probably was because, these running boards tended to collect water, and that developed rust. I've seen some Sports fully done up with the stripes and the graphics and everything, but with the running boards removed. They kind of look cool. Like, I don't hate it. And there's if you're looking at the Aerostar from a very specific certain angle, it's funny because you see how much the running board sticks out and it kind of looks like a little awkward. I'm admitting this. But overall, I really like the running boards on the Sports because I think they make it look just like a little bit lower. They give it that like 80s, it's not a wide body obviously, although it kind of is, but just they never like sort of finished it off on anywhere else on the vehicle. So I love the running boards. I think they're really cool. However, the Sport package without the running boards takes on a totally different look, and I think it's kind of cool too. Here we have some sort of like janky hybrid of everything where they just painted it black. You still have a little bit remnant of a stripe, but not really. And this thing is all about pure functionality. As we go back to our our bolt latch here, which is just so funny because I don't see a place to lock this. So all you're doing is just prohibiting the door from sliding open. I mean, it's possible that here we see a little bit more of the Sport stripe. And actually the blue with the red looks really, really cool. I thought usually this was a pink stripe. So to see a blue stripe on a red Sport, very interesting. Maybe this latch is broken, and so, it wants to open unless you latch this thing. So that would be a very funny, janky little jankification there. And you have some denting, there's a lot of jank on this Aerostar, which I really like, but it still kind of all fits together in that nice sort of perfect little janky way. Also, your like sort of wheel center caps here. Which is a beautiful wheel. I really like these wheels. These are, I think, the same wheels I have in my 86 Aerostar. And there were all sorts of different types of these center caps. But these ones are painted blue, which kind of like matches the stripe. But nothing else on the Aerostar is blue, so it almost makes you wonder if like at some point they repainted this stripe blue instead of pink, which I thought it usually was on the red ones. Just a lot of curiosities going on with this Aerostar, and I wish we had some better, like full-on pics. And the last thing we should talk about is this very janky, very wonderful roof rack. Although honestly, it looks kind of just, it looks like sort of the homemade variety here. Whenever you see like a long board on top of the roof rack, but sometimes you can do that. You can plop that on top of like a more standard roof rack. Here it looks like it's like kind of an entirely homemade thing. I like that it has this little flat board here. Obviously it keeps stuff from coming and hitting, but also I feel like that is like a very ripe place to put like some sort of sign, whether it's your business or You know, it almost looks like, I've never seen, I don't know if they ever made a school bus Aerostar. A lot of, like, back in my day, there was always one vehicle in the whole fleet of school buses that was just like a Chevy Suburban, but it had the big sign and the sirens and it said school bus, which is just hilarious. Like, technically it is a school bus, but actually it's more like a school vehicle because it's not really a bus, it's like a Suburban. Which, if you want to get, you know, if you want to delve into like the meaning of what a bus is a very interesting word. Like, if you actually, like, you know, on like a computer system, like a bus, it's just like a means for moving things, you know? So in the literal sense, like, that Chevy Suburban school bus was a bus. However, in the vehicular sort of like literal sense, or more contextual sense, it was not really a bus, but you call it a bus anyways. So I have never seen an Aerostar school bus, but imagine an Aerostar in all yellow with a school bus sign here with the sirens. Quite honestly, an Aerostar probably would have been a better choice than those Suburbans. Now, maybe you could have fit more people in one of the full-length Suburbans, but you're probably getting a little better gas mileage in the Aerostar, and you can probably fit up 7 people. So it's kind of a shame that Aerostars never became school buses. Also, they just kind of look a little bit more like a bus. And that may be one of the only roles that it never filled, although after this episode I'll Google Aerostar school bus and see if there, I gotta imagine there was one somewhere. Neither here nor there. So black bumpers, also weird. You know, this would have came with silver all the way around for your running boards, and I don't know if we have a shot of the rear bumper, unfortunately, but at least, you know, probably a replacement bumper at some point. But it looks good. I like the black over red. It's a really cool look, actually, especially with the blue. Like, everything is just janky enough that it all ties together. And the last thing I want to talk about is I've never seen an Aerostar that actually has the front seat removed. It looks like it has a little platform that's been built in here. It looks like a lot of DIY work on this, which I really appreciate. I love when people just sort of figure things out. You know, they ripped off the door paneling where they needed to, left it on where they needed to. And we can see in this great shot with this, like, also homemade shelf here, which looks bolted down, you have a nice long platform. So if you're carrying a ladder, you know, you can fit a ladder. I do this kind of in my Prius. I just put the seat all the way down. You can run a ladder the full lengthwise in there, still shut the door so you don't have to leave your door open and bungee cord everything up. I would imagine you could probably fit, like, definitely a 16-foot ladder in there, maybe even longer. Now, when I say 16 feet, that's the extended length. Anywho. Got a shop vac. I wonder what kind of business was run out of this thing. Hard to tell. Maybe some extension cords and stuff there. I like how the headliner's just been sort of like, you know, this is like the kind of work I do. It's like you're just trying to get it off, you're just hacking away. Although maybe they specifically cut around this bolt or something for a reason, but mostly it looks like it was done, you know, somewhat in haste. But that's fine. You know, you're just trying to get the job done. This thing's about functionality, getting to work. Has a lovely little, this is a great touch here, a nice little like coat hanger that's like a decorative, like a Victorian coat hanger that they just like, you know, metal screwed into the interior frame here. I like that a lot. So those little touches that are, you know, really make the vehicle and give it its sort of identity and character. Woof! That was a mad dash. So there you have it. A really lovely Aerostar Sport Cargo. That's a new one for me. I really like, I'm just such a sucker for the air dam, which I'm calling it now since I read that's what it's called. I used to call it the grill, and the bezels, the headlight bezels painted the body, the primary body color of the Aerostar. This will probably be the cover photo right here, probably doubled up. It's a great shot of the face of the Aerostar. There's just something about it, especially because you can kind of see the gloss come out in the paint, and it just adds something to it. Now, of course, I would like to see it with a red bumper. I would kind of like to see it totally monochromatic. I think that would look cool. But that's the beautiful thing about the Aerostar. You know, you could have 100 Ford Aerostars. I'd like one, like my teal Cayman green Aerostar, I've thought about like, man, what if instead of silver as the secondary accent color, I did it gold? Like the teal on gold would look so cool. And then I'm like, what if I took the running boards off and just ran it straight up, but it's still a sport? That would look really cool. And then I'm like, what if I painted the whole lower section teal as well? Or what if I painted the whole lower section blue to match that sort of blue stripe? Like, there's so many different ways you can go, even within, you know, one color scheme. There's just so many different little bits and bolts you can change, and one little color change like sets the whole thing off and makes it look totally different. So like, I like that this is red over black with a two-tone. I'd like to see it all red as well. Like you never get bored with mixing and matching the little panels on the Aerostar, and it's very modular in that way, and it's very cool, so that everything is very the same, and everything also at the same time has the ability to be completely unique. And that's just like alchemy to me. That's like this perfect little asymmetrical duality, yin and yang, you know, the whole thing. Like it just, something meshes and gels in my mind, and it becomes this beautiful little synthesis. And that's the Aerostar for you. So there you have it. Great 94 Aerostar. I hope you enjoyed this. I know it was a little bit all over the place, but I was really excited about this one. We're getting so close to 100 episodes. I got lots of little treats in store. Thank you to everybody who has commented. If you haven't watched my series, Broke YouTuber Forced to Sell Cars, I say that, you know, very tongue-in-cheek. I'm very, very fortunate and lucky to have everything I have in my life, including 2 Aerostars, and a lot of wonderful people, and other animals and creatures and things of that nature. And Janky, thank you to all of you for watching, and commenting and providing me with information on the Aerostar that I didn't know, and sharing the stories of the Aerostars you've purchased yourselves. It's very heartwarming to me. And we're just gonna keep it rolling. I think we got at least one more in Canada, and then we'll you know, see what happens for 99 and 100. Very excited. I'm rambling. Let's wrap it up. This has been Year of the Aerostar here on Janky AF. We'll have another one for you very soon, and until then, Janky do thanky.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
A little bonus content here from Janky AF. So this is how my great mind works, but I never connected the dots. I wanted to come full circle with this thing, and I never did. Is that this truly is a sport edition, which is not totally a cosmetic upgrade. When they say it was largely a cosmetic package, this one is in fact still largely a cosmetic upgrade, but not totally, because the fact that it has no muffler and no catalytic converter, I gotta figure, now if it has no muffler whatsoever, now maybe it's not creating back pressure, but let's just go along with it. Basically, this thing is like straight pipe, so you would think, in theory, you're actually getting a little bit more power, with a lot more noise as well, but hopefully too a little bit more power, because it doesn't have the restriction of that muffler system on there. So maybe even though it's a cargo sport, it does have a little bit more power or performance, and so therefore it is sort of like the ultimate sport. It's funny because Hoovie's Garage just came out with a video how he bought the Chevy HHR SS panel van. This has been sort of going around. DeMuro reviewed one, and there was like 216 made. One just popped up on Bring a Trailer, so it's kind of like a hot car right now. But it's the panel van, so the cargo version, but also the SS, so the sport version. So what this thing actually is kind of like a predecessor to that, because, you know, I mean, if you want to call it, you know, it's not like a factory SS. Some John just ripped off the muffler and disconnected the cab, but you know, in a janky sort of way, it ties in very nicely to that. So I wanted to bring all that together and connect those dots and say that this truly is sort of like a sport cargo, but I forgot to in the video because I start rambling and going on these incoherent trains of thought, but I couldn't let that slide. So here I am telling you about it in like sort of like 3D janky world, little behind the scenes here. Okay, so janky do thanky again for watching. We'll see you very soon for another one. Janky do thanky.